Hello and welcome to How the Light Gets In Festival. I'm Grace Blakeley, author of The Corona Crash, How the Pandemic Will Change Capitalism, and Stolen, How to Save the World from Financialization. And today I'm going to be interviewing the brilliant Rutger Bregman, author of Humankind, A Hopeful History. I'm going to be talking about that book, Humankind, today, which I would really encourage everyone to purchase and read. So the first question to you, Rutger, is for all the talk of solidarity and elevating our common humanity, why do you think that so many people have such a hard time believing that all human beings are basically?
Yeah, that's really the central question, isn't it? If people are really fundamentally decent, then why do so many of us believe that we're basically totally selfish? And you know what? I've got a very long answer to that because I basically think there are 4 reasons, and I try to go through them quickly. So the first one is relatively straightforward, right? It's the news. It's the kind of information that we get every day. The news is mostly about stuff that goes wrong, about corruption and terrorism and violence. So if you watch a lot of the news, then at the end of the day, you'll be quite cynical, and you get what psychologists call the mean world syndrome. You know, this feeling that the world is just a nasty and evil place. So perhaps it's good for your mental health to just follow a little bit less of the news. But then obviously, I mean, the news is a relatively modern phenomenon, and this cynical view of human nature has been with us for a very long time. I think you could even argue that it's one of the central ideas in Western culture, this idea that people deep down are just selfish, and that our civilization is only a thin veneer, only a thin layer, and below that lies raw human nature. It goes back all the way to the ancient Greeks. You can find it among the Orthodox Christians, St. Augustine writing about the notion of original sin, that we're all sinners. You can find it among the Enlightenment philosophers, among social Darwinists in the 19th century. It's embedded at the heart of capitalism. Again, this idea that people are just selfish and greed is good, etc., etc. So from the left to the right, from people who are religious to atheists, this idea comes back again and again and again. And sorry, this is a way too long answer, but just one final thing to say is that the reason I think it comes back again and again and again is that it's in the interest of those in power. Because if we cannot trust each other, then we need those at the top. Then we need hierarchy. We need kings and queens and presidents and CEOs and you name it. Basically, we need a Leviathan, as Thomas Hobbes, the famous British philosopher, called it, someone to keep us in check, because otherwise we start looting and plundering and killing each other, and we behave as the kids in Lord of the Flies. So it's this cynical, selfish view of human nature is I think the ultimate legitimization of power differences and hierarchy, and that's why this book, Humankind, may come across as this, self-helpy book about the power of kindness. But I think it's actually a quite subversive political book. If you really get what it's about, changing our view of human nature, it has quite revolutionary implications.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think certainly with the kind of, revival of this idea of democratic socialism that we're seeing in lots of parts of the world, that's really premised upon the idea that we are capable of cooperating within democratic institutions to actually make the world a better place. So I completely agree that this is really radical political stuff. You mentioned there the idea that, if we were all left to our own devices, it would end up like Lord of the Flies, right? But in your book, you have a really fascinating anecdote about the real Lord of the Flies. It's more than an anecdote, actually. It's an incredible story. Can you just tell us a little bit about that story and the kind of research that you did to find out about it?
Sure. Well, many of us will probably have read Lord of the Flies. I read it when I was, I think, around 16 or 17 years old. And I remember feeling quite depressed afterwards. No more Harry Potter for me. This is what kids are really like. That's what I thought. It was only years later, while I was working on this project, that I wondered, could Lord of the Flies just be, another version of this veneer theory? This deeply influential idea in Western culture. And has everyone ever checked what would really happen if kids would shipwreck on an island? Now, obviously, it's hard for scientists to convince parents to send their kids to uninhabited islands, right? So it's hard to test this scientifically, what would happen. But you could look at natural experiments. So I just well, I basically just started Googling, right, whether it has ever happened. And then I stumbled upon this obscure blog that told a story about something that had supposedly happened in the 60s near Tonga, which is an island group in the Pacific Ocean, where supposedly 6 kids had shipwrecked. And then I devoted around a year of my life to this story because I managed to track down the original Lord of the Flies children, 6 Tongan boys who are now around 70 years old. 4 of them are still alive. They're around 70 years old now. And they did shipwreck on an island, and they behaved in a very, very different way from the Lord of the Flies children. It's a quite hopeful story. If it would be a Hollywood film, then people would say, oh, this is highly unrealistic. Kids would never cooperate like that. But, it really happened.
Personally, I think that it should be a Hollywood film. Maybe that's one for your next project.
Well, it is going to be. So they've
great.
Yeah. So we formed a team, the 4th survivor and the captain who found them, who sadly passed away a couple of weeks ago. His name is Peter Warner. So yeah, we together we sold the rights to New Regency. They've also done 12 Years a Slave and Bohemian Rhapsody. So now it's going to be this huge production. It's been an absolutely, it's been a crazy experience. But it's just one wonderful story. And I think that if kids from around the globe still have to read Lord of the Flies in school today, which is fine. I think it's an interesting novel, and it asks some important questions. But then please, let's also tell them about this one time that we know of in all of world history where real kids shipwrecked on a real island, because that's a completely, totally different story of kids who cooperated for 15 months and who stayed the best of friends, basically.
One of my favorite parts of the book, and the title of the episode of when I had you on my podcast that I used, was this idea of survival of the friendliest. I particularly really found those studies that demonstrated that the thing that really differentiates human beings from other animals isn't necessarily massive, levels of intelligence, but actually sociality. Can you explain this idea of survival of the friendliest and why it's so important for kind of explaining why human beings have this natural capacity to kind of work together to solve their collective problems?
For a long time, evolutionary psychology told this quite cynical story about selfish genes, and that perhaps we just need to teach our kids generosity and altruism because they are born selfish. If you studied biology in the 1970s, that was basically the story that your teachers would tell you. But there's really been a scientific revolution, or a sort of silent scientific revolution in the last couple of decades. So many experts from very different disciplines have moved on to a more hopeful view of human nature. And so biologists have indeed come to talk about this whole concept of survival of the friendliest, which basically means that for millennia, it was not the nastiest among us or the smartest among us, but actually the friendliest who had the most kids and so had the biggest chance of passing on their genes to the next generation. Now, the question is obviously, how do we know this? There's a name for this theory. They call it self-domestication. I guess we all know what domesticated animals are. We've got cows, we've got pigs and sheep, etc. And we know that for a long time, we've selected these animals for tameness and friendliness. And biologists have known for a very long time that if you domesticate an animal, you start seeing this list of traits. So domesticated animals have thinner bones, smaller brains. They're much more playful. It's as if they never really want to grow up. And this whole list of traits together, it's called domestication syndrome. And now what's really interesting about human beings is that if you look at this list, you start to think, but wait a minute, humans are quite domesticated, right? We are very slow to grow up. Some people never grow up. We are very playful, especially when we're young. We have smaller brains compared to our ancestors. If you compare Homo sapiens skeletons from 50, 40, 30, 20,000 years ago, you see that difference. So in many ways, it seems to be the case that we are domesticated. But then the question is, who did it? Who tamed us? Who has domesticated us? And the answer that scientists now give is,
to continue watching this video, click the link in the top left or in the description below. Or visit iai.tv for more debates and talks from the world's leading thinkers on today's biggest ideas.